Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Wednesdays. This is an event that Michael K Vaughan over on his channel started, where he's going through Marvel's epic collection of full-color reprint volumes, one volume at a time, and just talking about them. And I saw that event and shamelessly horned my way in. And so now we do these together as a world's finest combination of the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage. And because Michael has 10 times as many epic collections as I have ever had, I'm letting him, of course it's his event, so he's doing the picking. He's picking which epic collection we do from week to week. And this week was going to be an X-Men epic collection, because another thing he's doing on his channel, I'll leave a link to his channel down below, another thing he's doing on his channel is reading all the way through the X-Men. Which I have to warn him is going to involve a lot more pain than pleasure. But the X-Men Epic collection that he had in mind, he couldn't do this week for a reason that you won't find in my responses. That's one of the fun differences between us, is that the reason he's not doing that Epic collection of the Avengers is that he hasn't read all the issues yet. There are no issues in any Marvel Epic collection that has been made that I have not read many, many, many times, and some of them countless times. We won't always be dealing with stuff that I know that well, but sometimes yes. And the substitute for the X-Men, instead of that, Michael chose another Marvel superhero team, one that is, if anything, more famous because of $3 billion profit in the movie theaters and home entertainment. $3 billion profit. And that is the Avengers. He's chosen the Epic collection that reprints the first 20 issues of the Avengers. It's this thing. It's Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. There's a Jack Kirby cover, maybe somewhat confusingly showing the Avengers in the background, first of all, instead of in the foreground of their own comic, confronting the Hulk and Prince Namor the Submariner. And that's a little bit confusing because the Avengers don't start out that way. Let me get you to an example of that. The Avengers start out as this team, where they're not fighting the Hulk and the Submariner. Instead, the Hulk is a member of the team. The team is Thor, the Hulk, the original Iron Man in his clunky golden armor, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. And that is the first iteration of the team. Written by Stan Lee, drawn by Jack Kirby, with inks by Dick Ayers. And Michael K Vaughan in his video refers to this as a great first issue. This is one instance in which we will disagree. He is most certainly wrong about that. This is perhaps the worst origin story ever thought up by Stan Lee, who was usually kind of good at that sort of thing. Or if not good, at least repetitive. Here, nothing about it makes any sense at all. Not at all. So I'm going to try to explain. Loki, the Norse god of mysteries, Thor's half-brother, is trapped in an alien realm. He has been banished there by Odin, the king of the gods, and his father, for previous misdeeds. So he can't leave there physically. But he can project his thoughts and basically his magic anywhere that he wants. So it's not all that great an exile, but he looks to Earth. He scans Earth, wherever Earth is in connection to this fantasy realm of his. He scans Earth because he wants to confront his brother. He wants to confront Thor. He wants to lure Thor back to Asgard, where he can fight Thor and beat him. And in order to do that, he needs to draw Thor out into the open. But Loki is aware that Thor has a human secret identity, Dr. Donald Blake. And in that secret identity, he sees patience. Loki's eyes are watching. For some reason, Donald Blake is not aware of that fact. And Loki says that, it would be no challenge at all to defeat Thor in his human form. I need him to assume his normal godlike form and then meet me in Asgard where we can fight. Loki is not in Asgard, and he can't get back to Asgard. But one way or another, that seems to be his plan. It doesn't make any sense even from the first sentence of the plan. From the first sentence, Loki says that it is because of the accursed Thor that I am an exile to this barren isle, ordered to remain here by Odin, the king of the gods. Though my body may be imprisoned, none can stop my magic powers from roaming the universe in search of revenge. A, Odin could stop that if he wanted to, and B, why is your first thought to orchestrate revenge against Thor instead of to escape? One way or another. I'm going to try to continue explaining. Loki sees Donald Blake helping a little boy and realizes, it would be nothing. It's no big deal for me to defeat Thor in human form. I need to make him transform into his godly form. How am I going to do that? Loki starts to scan, apparently, the whole world at random. I have no idea why, but he immediately comes across a figure he sees flying through the air, only then he realizes, no, it's not flying. It's a great green monster who's taking enormous leaps. It's the Hulk, who's leaping across the landscape. Loki decides, what is his plan? He says that he will convince the Hulk to create some sort of emergency that will draw Thor out into the open. The Hulk will be blamed. He'll become the most wanted man on Earth. Dr. Blake is certain to become Thor to join the hunt, little dreaming that is just what Loki wants. Loki has already shown us. He shows us when he is diverting the Hulk. The Hulk is leaping into the air somewhere in the great Midwest, I guess, or the Southwest. Loki makes the illusion of a batch of TNT on the train tracks in order to get the Hulk to divert, to stop that, to grab that and get it out of the way so that the train is not imperiled. And instead of doing that, because it's an illusion, the Hulk hits the tracks instead and destroys them just as the train is approaching. So the Hulk has made things worse. Okay, let's try to take this slowly. Loki can create illusions that can fool people, which means that hours earlier, Loki could have created the illusion of a monster attacking that boy. Even the Hulk attacking that boy. Some sort of giant monster attacking that boy. Loki can create illusions even from his mystical imprisonment. You create the image of a monster attacking that boy, and Dr. Donald Blake is going to transform into Thor in order to save the boy. Objective achieved, with no need to involve the Hulk. But one way or another, Loki sees the Hulk. He has no idea who this being is. Keep in mind, thinks at first that this being is flying. Has no idea who he is at all, and then decides to create the illusion of TNT on train tracks, just assuming that the Hulk will change course in order to save the humans on the train. He has no way of knowing that the Hulk will do that, and also, two things. One, you can't change your course if you're in the middle of a jump, right? You can change the position of your body, but you can't change your momentum. The Hulk actually can't fly. So he can't change his angular momentum in order to swoop down to a train tracks in mid-leap. And B, the fact that this little thing, this thing that's the size of the Hulk's hand, isn't there, is not going to mean the difference between him landing on the tracks and him destroying the tracks. He's either going to destroy them or he's not. Is he planning on landing on the tracks in order to grab this thing? Well, if he is, then why doesn't he land on the tracks and realize, oh wait, it's an illusion? And if he can't control that, then he would have destroyed the tracks anyway, without the illusion. One way or another, the people on the train are convinced that they see the Hulk poking through the tracks there. Keep in mind, this would all happen in a few seconds. So they wouldn't see it, and they wouldn't be able to identify the Hulk in any way. But one way or another, they assume that the Hulk is to blame, and hours and hours later, it hits the newspapers. Some of you who are fairly young will need to Google what that is, but once upon a time you got bales of newspapers wrapped in twine that had headlines that told you the news. Think of it as Twitter, only a version in which dishonesty is not required. Newspapers could be dishonest, they could also be inaccurate. But on Twitter, one of the rules of participation that you sign by clicking the I agree box is to always lie. Intentionally, knowingly lie about everything that you post on Twitter, and also lie about your responses to everything that you see on Twitter. So somebody says, I like tapioca pudding, you leave a response saying, I believe you are objectively worse than Hitler. The first person is lying. They don't like tapioca pudding, never had it in their lives. And you are also lying, because you don't think someone liking tapioca pudding is worse objectively than Hitler. You are all just engaged in Twitter's terms of service. Picture this as a kind of version of Twitter, only on paper and not always lying. And the newspapers say the Hulk is on the rampage. The Hulk leaps off, so where he is when this happens, nobody has any idea. But one way or another, somewhere in the Southwest, that's all that we're ever told for location, Rick Jones, the ne'er-do-well teenager who was with Dr. Bruce Banner when he transformed into the Hulk. Rick Jones doesn't get gamma irradiated himself. He doesn't become a monster himself, but Bruce Banner, who was 5 feet away from him when it happened, does become the Hulk. Rick Jones knows that the Hulk is not a bad guy, and that this must be a misunderstanding of some kind, that the Hulk would never attack a train. But he knows that the Hulk needs help. And fortunately, somewhere in the Southwest, he is a member of something called the Teen Brigade. I don't know what they are. I have no idea. Maybe they're all lovers. But one way or another, one of them is fairly handy with a ham radio. Again, you're going to need to Google this. Nobody uses ham radios anymore. But once upon a time, for teen zoot-suited, twist-doing delinquents, they were all the rage. And the Teen Brigade gets on their ham radio in order to use the special frequency of the Fantastic Four in order to alert them that the Hulk is on the loose somewhere. Somewhere. They're in the Southwest. We don't know if the Hulk was in the Southwest when it happens. There were cactuses, so maybe. No specifics could possibly be arrived on here. This is long before there were any kind of Earth-watching satellites of any kind. One way or another, they send out that broadcast to the Fantastic Four at the Baxter Building in New York City. Loki, from his celestial realm, God knows how far away, does not want the Fantastic Four involved. He just wants Thor involved. He wants Thor to respond to this emergency. And I guess Loki can see radio waves, and I guess radio waves behave like little pellets in the air. I mean, I make a joke about that on this channel, but I don't seriously believe it. I guess Stan Lee did, because this little stream of radio waves is headed for the Baxter Building. Thankfully, Loki, who had no idea that the Fantastic Four exist, I guess. Otherwise, why wouldn't he convince them to bring Thor out in the open? One way or another, I guess he's looking at the Baxter Building at just the right time to see those radio waves before they get to the Baxter Building, and is able to funnel them away from the Baxter Building so that the Fantastic Four is not alerted. Instead, Loki funnels the radio waves to a radio frequency he knows Dr. Donald Blake is listening to. If Loki can see radio waves, and if he's apparently looking at all radio waves on Earth all at the same time, all the time, then, and if he can manipulate them to move them around, then why didn't he send a signal to Donald Blake's radio? Why does he need to involve the Teen Brigade and the happenstance that Rick Jones happens to see the headline blaming the Hulk for an attack on a train track? But we're told that that headline is made hours later, and that Rick Jones just happens to see it on the street. What if Rick Jones was busy then? What if he was burning up the sheets with other members of the Teen Brigade? Then the plan might not have happened at all, when Loki could take a direct approach. He could either get the Fantastic Four to call Thor out into the open by contacting him directly, I guess one way or another, if Loki knows that this is Donald Blake's radio frequency, or he could send the radio signals to that frequency. Instead, he doesn't do anything like that. It's just one ridiculous coincidence on top of another. Donald Blake hears, oh, it's the Teen Brigade. They're somewhere in the Southwest, I think. Leave it to Stan Lee, the quintessential living, breathing New Yorker, to think the Southwest is probably like one or two neighborhoods of Canarsie. How hard can it be to canvass the whole thing? One way or another, Donald Blake thinks, oh, they're in the Southwest somewhere. I better see what they have to do. I am a doctor with a busy practice in New York, and I'm also the Norse god of thunder. When I get a random, completely vague-ass Teen Brigade radio notice about the Hulk being out there somewhere, I'm going to drop everything and go and find out what's going on. I'm going to go to the Southwest and find these kids in their room with their hobby ham radio and say, hey, what's up? I'm the Norse god of thunder. I heard you might have a problem. And Thor's not the only one who gets this mysterious message. Because apparently, although Loki can see radio waves everywhere in the world and divert them from heading to the Baxter building, he can't stop other people from seeing them, or doesn't bother to. Maybe this makes him tired. One way or another, yes, Dr. Donald Blake gets the radio signals that Loki wants him to get for some reason. But so does Ant-Man and the Wasp, who are in New York. Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne are in New York. They are adventurers in New York. What they think they can do against the Hulk, I have no idea whatsoever. And they're about to get in this gun that Hank Pym used to use to fire himself at ant size, because they have a long way to go. They're in New York. They have to go to the Southwest. And Janet Van Dyne, who is the Wasp, says, well, I have wings. Why are we bothering when I have wings of my own? Why are we riding ants? And Hank Pym says, well, because, you sweet little thing, if you use your wings, you'll be exhausted by the time you get there. It's thousands of miles away. I guess the ants aren't going to be exhausted, or maybe they're going to be a lot of them. I want to go back in time and ask Stan Lee, just how long do you think it would take a succession of flying ants? Because it won't be just a couple. They'll get exhausted much faster than Janet Van Dyne would, since she has, human lungs. How long do you think it would take a succession of flying ants to get from Manhattan to the Southwest? I have a little hint for you. The whole adventure would be long, long over. In fact, the teen brigade wouldn't be teens anymore by the time it happened. But no. And in addition to them, there's also Tony Stark, who tells us that he just happened to be listening to the right radio frequency to hear the teen brigade's call for help. He tells us that he's going to make most of the journey to the Southwest using his solar batteries. It'll only be once he gets close that he switches to his actual jet-powered boot jets. So it takes him hours to get there. Again, why is he able to just happen to hear this radio broadcast if Loki doesn't want anybody else to hear it except Thor? If it's not just a question of diverting things from the Baxter building, it apparently means that anybody who's just accidentally listening could hear this, including maybe other superheroes. Who knows? One way or another. One way or another, the Teen Brigade keeps trying. They have time for lunch. As you can see, one of them is eating a sandwich. There they are, all together, good, upstanding boys. They think nobody's heard their message, so they try the Fantastic Four again and get through. Since I guess Loki got tired of monitoring all electromagnetic emanations everywhere in the world at all times. They get through to the Fantastic Four, and Reed Richards tells them that they're wrapping up another case, but according to my calculations, your message should be picked up by some others who can help you. What on earth does that mean? What on earth can that possibly mean? My calculations? The radio frequency, the radio signal is going out to everybody. Tony Stark hears it by accident. We don't know how Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne hear it, but at this point in Marvel history, Reed Richards has no idea that Hank Pym is Ant-Man. He has no idea that Tony Stark is Iron Man. He certainly has no idea that Thor is Dr. Donald Blake. How does he calculate that any of these people are going to be able to... How does he calculate that the Teen Brigade is suddenly going to be confronted by a coterie of superpowered people that aren't the Fantastic Four? And also, if the Hulk is on a rampage somewhere in the Southwest, what case does the Fantastic Four have that could be more important than that? They make it very clear in their own book and in the Avengers in just a little while that is the biggest priority when the Hulk is on a rampage. Superheroes drop everything to make sure that no lives are endangered, that no states are ripped apart. One way or another, the Teen Brigade is staggered to realize that although they're not getting the Fantastic Four, they are getting a bunch of other superpowered beings who all arrive at the same time. They all get the message at the same time, and they all arrive at the Teen Brigade headquarters in the Southwest at the same time. How they would know, maybe Iron Man, but Ant-Man and the Wasp, Thor, how they would trace a radio signal to the group's headquarters is beyond me, and it was beyond Stan Lee, too. This is just a dumb origin story. That's all there is to it. It's just dumb. Off the top of my head, I could have thought up 10 ways that would have been better than this. The most obvious one being that the Fantastic Four, since they eventually get the message, since they eventually get the message. And that's to leave apart the fact that the local authorities in the Southwest, once they realized that they had a Hulk problem on their hands, would probably have called the Fantastic Four directly, since no other super teams exist in the Marvel Universe at this time. But one way or another, once the Fantastic Four got the message, they could easily have tried to contact all other known super beings. Somehow, maybe by Reed Richards' mysterious calculations. So one way or another, we need the Teen Brigade involved, because Stan Lee was thinking in his office, it's the teens that I'm selling this to. They're you bet your sweet bippy. They're the ones that are hep to the tracks I'm laying down. So I got to have the teens involved. One way or another. All of these super beings show up at the Teen Brigade headquarters and realize Loki says, "Bah, this complicates things for me. I only want to find a way to lure Thor up here. I'm not interested in those others." Keep in mind, again, Loki is not Loki's plan is to lure Thor to Asgard, but Loki is not in Asgard. One way or another, he wants to separate Thor from the rest of them, so he creates an illusion of the Hulk that splits Thor off to go hunting. And Thor realizes, "Loki, thou evil one, I know what your plan is, but I have warned you never to meddle in Earth affairs, and now you dare defy me." And Thor then proceeds to Asgard. He leaves to go to Asgard. He doesn't go back to the house and say, here's what I think is going on. The Hulk is actually innocent. If Loki is involved, that is certain. I will go deal with him on my own because I'm not taking the rest of you to Asgard. He doesn't say anything like that. He doesn't go back, even though he's not far from the Teen Brigade headquarters in the Southwest. He doesn't go back and explain any of this. He just takes off. In the meantime, Michael K. Vaughan points this out in his video. This is probably the dumbest element in the issue. In the meantime, the Hulk somehow realizes that he's going to be blamed for this destruction of this train tracks. As Michael points out, this is the surly, grumpy Hulk, not the stupid Hulk who was to follow. The Hulk realizes that and realizes that he's going to be a wanted being by law enforcement. So he hides in a circus where he pretends to be a robot named Meccano who happens to look like the Hulk, only in clown makeup. And he has Hulk-style super strength, so he can wow the crowds by juggling animals. And the circus master says, "This is the greatest show. It's just fantastic. It's such a great thing that Meccano showed up." Which leads you to wonder how this happened. I know you're not supposed to ask that, but in a good comic, you could ask that and come up with a way where it happens. But how could this happen? Does the Hulk, in his green shorts, go to this circus in the Southwest that is certainly going to recognize him on sight? If train operators can recognize the Hulk by his head peeking up on the train tracks, then the circus operator can certainly recognize the Hulk if he shows up in the home office and says what? "I'm hiding from the law, pretend that I'm a robot, and dress me in clown makeup." That obviously didn't happen because the people backing this circus obviously think it is a robot named Meccano. So how does that happen? Does the Hulk wander into a dry goods store in the Southwest and say, "Have you got any clown makeup for me? Maybe a clown suit in size 57 extra large?" And they don't think anything of it? And how does he pay for that? Or does he steal it? And then he dresses as a clown, and then what? Does Meccano, the super powerful robot, work on his own? Does he clank his way up to the head office of the circus and say, "I'm actually a super-powered robot"? There's no way that it works. There's no way that you get from A to B. It just is ridiculous. That's all. And the Avengers find a report of this super powerful robot. One of our army of ants has seen an impossibly powerful performer at a local circus. It could be the Hulk. Okay, so Hank Pym has had ants looking for information in the vicinity. How many ants and for how long has he been doing this? So the Hulk just became Meccano just now, but the circus performers say that the show's been sold out every night this week. So how do the ants know that this performer? How do the ants know what the Hulk is? First of all, how does Hank Pym convey that to animals that have basically no brains? They basically have a souped-up nervous system. How does he convey that to them? How does he tell them to be on the lookout for something super strong? How does an ant know what is super strong and what isn't? And they're looking everywhere? Does he have these things everywhere? They're at the circus? Are they in your cupboards looking for the Hulk? One way or another. One of those ants happens to tell Hank Pym this. It happens to seem reliable, and the Avengers happen to be there, and they charge off to find out whether or not this circus performer is really the Hulk. They get up close and see that it is really the Hulk, which is exactly what the circus proprietors would have seen, and also the unlucky shopkeep who sold this 7'2", 1-ton green being clown makeup for him to, I guess, apply before he went to the circus. One way or another, they start to fight the Hulk. The Avengers, in this case, Iron Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp, start to fight the Hulk. And it's no contest. The Hulk tries to flee. I don't know why he would try to flee, but he tries to flee. And at one point, Iron Man is chasing him. His leap ends. He leaps up behind Iron Man and with one punch smashes his breastplate. And Iron Man was the only one who had any chance of fighting the Hulk if Thor's not there. Ant-Man and the Wasp don't have any idea what to do. They're completely useless. But we switch action to Asgard, where Thor has gone in order to ask Odin's permission to visit Loki in his realm of exile. Now, if I remember correctly, this panel has been redone for the purposes of reprinting. One of you would have to tell me that, but maybe Michael Vaughan has an earlier reprint of this. I seem to remember this word bubble completely covering Thor's head in this panel because it was so poorly done. I seem to remember that. I remember that bothering me when I bought this issue. 50 years ago. I could swear that this face is redrawn for this issue and that bubble is just sort of maneuvered. I could swear that this was the rest of Thor, but not his head, speaking those words. But one way or another, Odin gives Thor permission to go visit Loki in exile and says something hilarious. He says, "Though you be son of my heart, Loki too is my son. I cannot interfere in what transpires between you." Odin's not going to stick true to that. But Thor goes to the Mystic Island where Loki is imprisoned, and they do have a fight. And it's basically no contest. Loki uses illusions to confuse Thor, and he calls up a troll to try and imprison Thor, but it doesn't slow Thor down at all. And he says, "With noble Odin's permission, I shall bring you to Earth. There you will find others who are waiting for you, others almost as powerful as I." Okay, why? Why? Why to any of that? Why to any of that? Why, if Thor left Earth without even mentioning to the Avengers that Loki was involved, that the Hulk is certainly innocent, and that he will go and take care of things, if he left without even bothering to mention that to any of them, then why would he bring Loki back to face justice at their hands? And is Iron Man almost as powerful as Thor? Is Ant-Man? Is the Wasp? No. Why would Thor even think that? And keep in mind, this problem is in the DNA of the Avengers. Why would Thor bother with them at all? Why would he go on to have thousands of adventures with them? But one way or another, he decides to take Loki out of exile with Odin's permission. Why does Odin give this permission? I have no idea. And what difference does it make? If Loki can completely affect not only the physical reality of everywhere in the universe outside of his land of exile without physically leaving it, but also the mental state of everyone outside of his world, then why is it even necessary? His exile is ineffective. It's not going to matter who brings him to justice. What he needs is not a different jury, but a different prison. But one way or another, Thor brings Loki back to Earth. The Hulk has escaped. At one point, he passes a jet in midair on one of his prodigious leaps, and a few seconds later, Iron Man shows up right next to that plane and says, "Have you seen the Hulk? They're moving at hundreds of miles an hour, thousands of miles in the air." These conversations happen anyway. And eventually, Thor confronts the Avengers. He brings Loki is his prisoner, and he brings Loki to the Avengers in order to tell them, this is Loki, my arch enemy. It was he who planned the train wreck. It was he who arranged for the Hulk to be blamed in order to make me appear so that he could trap me. Okay, but Thor could have told them all of that without going to confront Loki. It would have stopped them from fighting. They've been fighting this whole time, doing lots of property damage. Thor could have told them that. He knew those things anyway. He didn't need to show them Loki, and showing them Loki only means that you introduce the possibility of Loki attacking. And Loki does. He does immediately. He turns himself radioactive. I don't know why. I have no idea why. He says, I'll give you 10 seconds to leave, taking Iron Man with you. Then Thor and I will resume our battle. If you remain, you are doomed. Thor and Loki weren't battling. Loki had lost. If the others leave or if they stay, if he turns to fight Thor again, the same thing will happen again. They end up stuck to Thor's hammer. They weren't fighting. Loki had already lost. And also, why is this a danger? Iron Man's suit does not protect him against radiation. The Hulk was made from radiation. Janet Van Dyne and Henry Pym might be in danger, but nobody else is. But one way or another, it turns out that Loki is carelessly standing on a trapdoor that leads to a lead-lined container that saves everybody from his radiation. Thor tells people that it was totally unnecessary. Loki cannot remain radioactive for more than another few minutes. So it was all a bluff anyway. Thor could have said that. He could have said, if you all just take a few steps back and wait a few minutes, he can't maintain this. Why that is true, I have no idea. Why can't Loki do this all day? And Loki can't break out of a lead-lined container. The lead-lined container is stopping his radioactivity from escaping from the container. Keep in mind, the radioactivity that he shed while he was standing there is still there. Stan Lee, despite the fact that he generated probably a dozen comic book characters from a vague idea of radioactivity, never actually did understand it. but one way or another, why can't Loki break out of a lead-lined container? He tells Thor earlier in the same issue that everybody has superpowers in Asgard. Why can't he break out of a lead-lined container? Would Thor be helpless in a lead-lined container one way or another? Thor says Loki can only stay radioactive for a few minutes, and once that danger is past, I will take him out of that container and bring him back where he belongs, after which I shall open the tank and return him to where he belongs. What does that mean? You're not returning him to Asgard, I guess, because he's had a penalty against him by Odin, so you're taking him back to his land of exile. Well, okay, but from his land of exile, he can wreak unbelievable amounts of havoc. The only thing he can't do is physically walk out of the place. Other than that, he can do everything he's done in this issue. You're going to bring him back there so he can do it again. And yet, we don't hear from Loki for a suspiciously long time. He doesn't seem to want vengeance on the Avengers. And the Avengers become a team at the end of this issue. The Ant-Man and the Wasp say, well, I know that the Loki problem is solved, but it seems to me that we do a lot of good together. Why don't we stick together as a team and call ourselves the Avengers? And so they do. Now, if you were Hank Pym and your only superpower was transforming you and your girlfriend into the size of an insect, you might want to team up with Iron Man, Thor, and the Hulk. But one way or another, what is the reason why any of these beings would say yes? Why would any of them say yes to this? The Fantastic Four, there are family bonds involved. The Inhumans, there are family and also royal bonds involved. You can go right down the list. For Marvel superhero teams, anyway, you can go right down the list. Why would any of these people agree to this? It makes no sense whatsoever. None at all. It's just contrary, a rare instance of disagreement with Michael K. Vaughan. This is a rotten first issue. Just rotten. It's loaded with dumb coincidences and stupid plot contrivances and a conclusion that comes out of nowhere. No, there's no way that these people would continue to work together. Especially since before this issue started, Iron Man says he wasn't even sure the Hulk was real. And all of them are immediately willing to assume the worst about the Hulk. And that continues. Because in the very next issue, when the team faces the Space Phantom, who can mimic their forms, the Hulk realizes how horrible an opinion the other Avengers think of him. Because when the Space Phantom mimics the Hulk's form, when the Space Phantom takes your form, you get transported to another dimension. And you're trapped there until the Space Phantom calls you back, until he drops your form. And when the Space Phantom takes the form of the Hulk, in this issue number 2 of the Avengers, when Hank Pym gets a little more power, he becomes Giant Man instead of Ant-Man. When the Space Phantom takes the Hulk's form, the Avengers say, we never really trusted you, we knew you were going to betray us, you've always been too dangerous, we have to take you down, that sort of thing. And when the Space Phantom jettisons the Hulk's form and the Hulk comes back, at the end of the issue, he jumps off into the sunset because he says, you obviously all don't like me. You have horrible opinions of me. When there's no way he would know that, because you can't. We already know from this issue that when you're transported to that alien dimension while the Space Phantom has your form, you don't know what's going on back on Earth. So the Hulk would not have heard any of those negative opinions. It's just amateurish writing problems that just dog this title. Issue after issue after issue, where Stan Lee is reduced to things that you don't typically see from him. He's reduced to not just coincidences. He loves coincidences, but dumb coincidences, things that bad writers do. He's reduced, worst of all, I think, to Deus Ex Machina, quite literally in this case, by having Thor. Thor is the Avengers' ace in the hole. When they are overwhelmed, he pulls some new Thor-style superpower out of a hat. And on top of that, there's sloppiness involved. That's also not really like Stan Lee. Stan Lee was a businessman. He was, a hustler. But he cared about the continuity that he was almost single-handedly creating. And there are problems all throughout these issues in terms of that continuity. Mostly, people failing to recognize other people. For instance, the Enchantress and the Executioner, 2 Asgardians from Thor's home, crop up as recurring supervillains over and over again in the first 20 issues that we're reading. There never seems to be that much recognition between the 3 of them. Thor recognizes the Enchantress. He doesn't appear ever to communicate with the Executioner, who, keep in mind, he would have known for thousands of years. That just doesn't seem to make much sense at all, and it also brings up a question that I've raised before. Are Asgardians free to just romp at will on Earth? If so, why wouldn't more of them be there, causing more trouble and also doing more good? One way or another, I don't think in the 20 issues that we're reading today, I don't think Thor ever even talks to the Executioner, much less grapples with him. When the Executioner is a subject of Thor, Thor isn't just an Asgardian. He's the son of the king. He's a prince. One way or another, they don't appear to recognize each other. And at one point, a villain calls figures from the past to fight the Avengers. And one of those figures is Hercules. And Thor fights Hercules, and neither one of them seems to recognize each other. So is this villain pulling Hercules from a time in the ancient past before he had met Thor? How is technology enabling you to do that? How is technology enabling you to reach that far in the past and be so precise about it? And if that's true, then how come later on, when Thor and Hercules meet in Thor's own comic, they appear not to recognize that they'd ever fought each other before at the behest of a villain in the Avengers? And probably worst of all, Stan Lee has the brilliant idea to bring Captain America back. Captain America was created by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon during World War II as one of a host of World War II-style flag-wearing adventurers with a mighty shield and a great attitude and a teen sidekick named Bucky. Stan Lee decides to bring Captain America back. He has been in suspended animation since the end of the war. And when the Avengers revive him, he's good to go. he's displaced in time, but he's good to go. He's a incredibly powerful super athlete with a really tough shield. That's a great idea. That is pure Stan Lee. But, as you can see on the cover, this issue features the Submariner, who was created by Bill Everett and is also a World War II hero. And at one point at the height of combat here, let me see if I can go straight to it. There's a moment that I bought this issue on the newsstand at Tro's Dry Goods store in small town Iowa. I bought this issue. I parted with hard-earned money for it. And even then, if I'm 28 now, who knows how young I was then, Captain America watches while the Submariner is fighting the Avengers and endangering Rick Jones. And Captain America decides to leap forward. The Submariner says, "Make one move towards me and the boy's life is..." What? Keep in mind, the Submariner would not take a hostage like that. It's not part of his character. But one way or another one. But who? And Captain America says, "The name's Captain America, Namor. I'll make sure that you never forget it." And Namor says, "I've tolerated enough indignities this day. Now my vengeance shall be swift and sure and without mercy." And Captain America says, "He's stronger than me, but I'll find a way to outmaneuver him." The name's Captain America, Namor, and don't you forget it. Captain America and Prince Namor fought on the same side during World War II. Stan Lee remembers this. He wrote some of those adventures. Jack Kirby remembers this. He drew some of those adventures. That is just amateurish. That is just an amateur's gaffe. At one point, Iron Man gives Captain America magnets on his glove that allow him to call his shield back to him once he's thrown it. This is before the days of the miracle boomerang that Captain America's shield is now. And when Captain America is looking at the magnets and the setup for his shield, he mentions, "If only I had had gadgets like this and allies like you in my previous career, what wonders I would have accomplished." Captain America, as Stan Lee and Jack Kirby both know, fought alongside the Human Torch and his teen sidekick Toro. They fought alongside Prince Namor, the Submariner, who's as strong as the Hulk. They fought alongside the Wizard, Miss America, whole bunch of other heroes, whole bunch of others. These creators knew that, but they have Captain America forget it all. Which would be one thing if all along the idea had been that Captain America is partially amnesiac, but that is not the case. He remembers everything. One way or another, these issues go on, and Stan Lee realizes pretty soon, by issue number 16, the Immortal, Avengers number 16, he realizes that there are problems here and that he wants to shake things up a lot, and he does it in a big way, which is to change the lineup of the team. Now, he's already introduced a very interesting little detail. In one issue of the Avengers, the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, is struck by a stray bullet and looks to be seriously wounded. The Avengers have to rush her to the hospital. Now, Michael K. Vaughan can correct me, or you other comic book fans can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the first time that any writer thought to have stakes involved with these superheroes. Not the end of the world, not the crashing of the cosmos, not Galactus, but a stray bullet that could kill you in the line of your duties as a superhero. That was interesting, but this is even more interesting. I had no idea what was going on when this happened, where the Avengers quit. The original teammates, Hulk is long gone by this point, but Iron Man, Ant-Man, the Wasp, and Thor all leave the team. Thor doesn't even say goodbye. He just disappears. All the others make fond farewells, leaving Captain America, the first new member of the team, to make a new team. He puts out the call, and the new team is only 4 people. It's not a big, gigantic team, and they're not very powerful. There's the Scarlet Witch, who has the ability to cast mutant hexes. She's a mutant. She's not a sorceress being at this point in Marvel history. And those hexes have a variety of unpredictable events. Sometimes when Stan Lee wants to complicate the plot, he will make the Scarlet Witch unaware of what's going to happen. Sometimes her hexes basically allow her to do whatever she wants. And she does know what she's doing. What she wants to do actually happens. And her brother, Quicksilver, who is super fast, has super speed. Not Flash-level super speed, but still fast enough to move so fast that a normal person can't see him move. And Hawkeye, who is an Iron Man villain, who has a bunch of gimmick arrows. Basically, a Green Arrow character gone bad. So he has explosive arrows and mist arrows and magnetic arrows and all that sort of thing. These 3 are basically criminals. Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch were part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, a terrorist organization run by Magneto. And Hawkeye has been a villain. He has not been a hero. The Avengers Captain America takes these 3 in and forges them into a team. And the artwork changes as well. It goes from Jack Kirby, who contrary to what Michael K. Vaughan says, I don't think Jack Kirby ever did good work when he was drawing the Avengers. I just don't like any of it. Instead, the artwork changes to Don Heck, who I think is really good. You don't really see it in these early issues. Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. There's a very controlled dynamic that Heck manages by changing perspectives. He does that a lot more than Kirby does, and he does it, I think, very effectively. Look, here's an example, just one little example. Heck comes into his own. He gets better as he's going along. The next 20 issues of the Avengers are great in ways that these first 20 are not. But take, for instance, this little sequence here where Captain America is working out. He mentions in this sequence that he doesn't have any superpowers, so he has to work out constantly in order to keep up with the rest of the team, especially since he's the leader. Look at what we've got here. That's from above him, as he is not only vaulting on a pole, but throwing his shield. This is from slightly below him, as he's smashing a 2x4 with his fist, and this is from exactly level, where there's a dynamic involved here. You can even see it in these other scenes. Heck will sometimes bring you zeroed in, sometimes very far away, and it works. It works even in this these initial appearances of his. In ways that I don't think it ever did work for Kirby. The word that I want to use, the fancy word that I want to use here is composition. The composition is much better. Don Heck is much better at composition, except in action sequences. Nobody beats Kirby in action sequences, but the mature Kirby, not the Kirby on this issue. He left after this, and I think Heck was a good addition. And Captain America's team, his quartet of heroes, goes on for a few issues, and I was incredibly skeptical. I admit, as any of you who have been watching my comic book videos will know, I bought this for Thor. And as long as he was in it, I was perfectly happy to keep reading. When I realized that he was leaving, and so was everyone else, these characters I'd never heard of were coming in, I was very skeptical. I ended up loving these issues. The fact that you have a slightly depowered team with lots of interpersonal conflict made it great. Made it absolutely great. So that when let me get you some later covers. Yeah, when issues like this were happening, this is a great Jack Kirby cover, but it's Don Heck artwork on the inside, fighting Kang once again. When those later issues happened, I remember I was as eager to get them at the newsstand as I was to get the latest issue of the Fantastic Four. Two different quartets of heroes having great adventures. So maybe that will be a future Avengers epic team up. Who knows? I'm sure that will be an epic Wednesday somewhere down the line. But Michael K Vaughan has already warned us that next week will be an X-Men collection, and I will try to take a little special K ahead of time so that I'm a little bit calmer with that. I didn't go into this video meaning to spend so much time deconstructing one issue of the Avengers, but it's particularly bad, and I thought it deserved it. The rest of the run gets better as it goes along. I believe most effectively once Kirby is dumped, and you get a different artist, and then you get a different lineup, and the whole title changes tenor. And I think becomes much better for it. Becomes the Avengers, the feel of the Avengers that stayed true for 200 issues after that. So we will have plenty of time to talk about the Avengers as Michael picks and chooses. But next time it will be Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. So buckle in your X-Wing, and I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.